What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So, Breath of the Wild 2. It's something we assume is coming out later on this year with that Zelda anniversary, but a website actually posted what seems to be a release window for it, and it picked up quite a bit of traction over this past weekend, and I figure we would talk about that here today and how likely this release window really is. Also, we are going to be talking about a game that I thought was lost to time, but it appears like there's an entire playthrough right now on YouTube, that being Goldeneye Remastered, a game that was supposed to release, I think, back in like 2007 or 2008 on the Xbox 360. Now you can watch the entire campaign, and it looks like we may be able to play it later on this year. Guys, if you enjoyed these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton. And if you're new to the Small Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with what else but Bayonetta 3 and Hideki Kamiya. Now, they had an interview with Video Games Chronicles, and this one part here really blew up online, but I think it's pretty straightforward what he's saying here. But let's head over here to the interview where they say, here's the inevitable Bayonetta 3 question. You were recently quoted as saying you'd like to provide a public update on the game this year. Is that right? Kamiya responds, it's not really our position to say, but it's January. We've got to have something come out, right? I guess it's safe to expect that something will come out. There's still a lot of the year left is what I'm saying. By update, do you mean something more substantial than another CGI logo? Kamiya responds, I understand it's driving the fans crazy. In light of that, my suggestion would be that maybe we should all reset and forget about Bayonetta 3. Then when something finally does happen, it will be a nice surprise, won't it? So here's the deal with this one, because people thought, wow, we got to forget about Bayonetta 3. I mean, they told us about it years ago. Shouldn't they have something ready? This isn't something that you're going to get an answer out of anyone at Platinum Games for, because it's Nintendo's call on this one. Nintendo and Sega are obviously collaborating, and they're contracting out to Platinum Games to create the game. So that's their job. The job for marketing is on Nintendo, and they're going to obviously put it in a direct of some kind, probably at some point this year. Later on in the year, if it's coming out this holiday, they'd, I guess, want to at least tell us about it soon, but that's something, again, that's up to Nintendo. All Kamiya can do is, yeah, maybe we should all just kind of relax a bit, forget about it, and then when you see it, it'll be this really cool big surprise. Also, another part of that interview actually touched on the Astral Chain situation that was spotted very recently online. This showing that the Astral Chain license holding appears to be done by just Nintendo now, whereas before it was Platinum and Nintendo. We can go over here once again to that same interview on VGC, where they say, on the subject of Astral Chain, Forum Sleuths noticed that our website recently removed a reference to Platinum from the game's copyright, leaving just Nintendo. Should we read anything into that? Inaba said it's as it looks. To clarify, a similar copyright change for The Wonderful 101 led to Nintendo handing over the IP to Platinum. Does this mean Nintendo now owns Astral Chain? As it is written on the website, Astral Chain is their IP, and as such, there are limitations on how much we feel we should talk about. And the editor's note there says they asked for clarification, but they were responded to with Platinum Games saying, not in a position to answer this question, which means that they are either still working out the details around a contract surrounding this, or talks are still ongoing, or they're still signing paperwork. It does appear that Astral Chain is just going to be owned completely by Nintendo. The way they're referring to it here is very much, yes, the legal things are still happening. We're still in the process. We can't tell you about that because we're still in the process. So to me, looking at this, Nintendo stepped that aside so that they could do something with Wonderful 101 beyond just Nintendo saying, well, you got to just put it on the Switch and you can't do much else than that. It seems like they wanted to do more with Wonderful 101, and Nintendo let them do that. So here, maybe Platinum Games felt obligated to say, hey, you know what? Yeah, Astral Chain, go for it. That's yours now. So that's kind of how I'm reading into this one, but we'll see if Nintendo does anything else with Astral Chain. I think it's sold enough to where they are at least interested in continuing the series. Oh, and I had talked recently about IO Interactive and 007 and how it seemed like they were probably going to move on from the Hitman franchise as they were ramping up hires and looking to take their staff from 200 people up to 400. And a lot of that to me seemed like they were mostly working towards being this big 007 game, possibly a trilogy. However, now it looks like they're going to continue the Hitman series, and they're looking to do things like DLC for Hitman 3, and I guess just newer entries in the series, even looking at some of the older maps that they now have access to for the entirety of the Hitman franchise. Apparently, all of Hitman 3's costs have just been covered already. Like, that's good. So to them, they're looking at this as a successful franchise in Hitman and a ton of potential in 007. And hey, you know what? IO's come a long way. At one point, we didn't know if they'd still be around. Now here they are with a very successful franchise with the Hitman series and an up-and-coming one that I think could be really good if they do it right with 007. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Breath of the Wild 2, as it looks like a retailer may have told us when it's coming out. Kinda. Let's go over here and take a look. This appears to be the tweet that noticed this. This is from Ezreal saying The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2, Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne HD Remastered. According to Austrian retailer Gameware, Shin Megami Tensei 3 HD will release in May 2021. Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 would release during the second quarter of 2021. Calendar year or fiscal year? I'll go ahead and answer that. It'd be calendar year. They wouldn't deal with a company's fiscal year because that means that in their system, they would have all kinds of quarters all over the place, like for different companies like EA and Nintendo or Sony or Microsoft may not all be lined up correctly with the same quarters for fiscal years. It doesn't make a lot of sense for that. If you're a retailer who's listing a release date, you're just gonna go with Q2 or Q1, and it's exactly what it means to everyone else when it comes to the calendar year. Okay, Q1, you're thinking January, February, March. Or if you go into Q2, as this says, you're thinking apparently April, May, or June. Does that make sense for Breath of the Wild 2? To me, it really doesn't. Mostly because I feel like Nintendo would want to align this a bit better with the Zelda anniversary that will really come into full swing towards the end of this year, or I guess really since they're still celebrating the Mario anniversary now from last year, they could take Breath of the Wild into like March of next year, and technically that would line up when the Switch first came out with Breath of the Wild. Also, let's talk about this Gameware site for a second, because they've actually had some things right and some things kind of wrong. Like, let's talk about GTA 6, because they listed that with a 2020 release date, and a lot of people thought that meant that it could be coming out alongside of something like the PS5 and the Series X, or maybe even be a cross-gen game with the PS4 and the PS5 and the Xbox and all of that. Turns out that didn't happen because I'm not playing GTA 6 right now, but beyond that, they've gotten some things right. As an example, we even talked about them a while ago when they told us about Need for Speed Heat with that release date and even some cover art for it, all of which appears to be correct, obviously, because this being back in 2019 before we knew about Need for Speed Heat, well, came out. It's actually a pretty fun game. And the other one they had correct was Devil May Cry 5, as they posted that midway through 2018 before we had found out about it. Yeah, that was also posted up there. So again, it's hard to say necessarily because sure, Nintendo is an interesting company and they can do some weird things, but I feel like with Breath of the Wild 2, more than anything, they would try to keep it pretty standard. Large marketing run-up for it, coincide with the anniversary where they'll probably have other things with companies like we saw Mario with Lego. I'm sure you'll have all kinds of merchandise for the Legend of Zelda franchise, maybe a 3D collection as well, and then to top it all off, Breath of the Wild 2. Like, it makes too much sense to not do that. So unfortunately, no, I don't think Q2 makes a lot of sense for Breath of the Wild 2, and I wouldn't get your hopes up for that one. Next up, let's talk about Goldeneye Remastered, because I was absolutely fascinated by this video. A while ago, we had a video post on YouTube that's about 30 minutes of showing someone play through some of the game, and it was just like, wow, what could have been? It was like 60 frames per second, looked great on the Xbox 360. Look, on the N64, we deal with a game that runs at times like 15 frames per second with the single analog stick, and it's like, if Goldeneye, like that version was brought up, like how they did with Perfect Dark, with online multiplayer, that would be super impressive. It almost happened. Yeah, there's a lot of talk still about what went on behind closed doors as to why this did not actually release. Microsoft was involved. We had MGM, license holders for 007, Nintendo being involved, because obviously Rare was with Microsoft. And again, it was kind of all over the place there. And it seems like people are just pointing fingers all over the place, other than I guess at Microsoft. Microsoft seemed basically on board with this whole thing, whereas people are pointing at Nintendo or the rights holders for like 007 as being two that had a lot of issues with the release overall. But if you take a look at this video here, I mean, wow, it would have been so cool to have this game out there. Now, this was posted up by Grassloo00, and they had kind of hyped it up a bit, and they delivered. It's about a little over 2 hours, 2 hours and 13 minutes, and I seriously sat here with it on the side. I was doing some video editing and stuff. I was just watching it because it's so awesome to see this kind of in this new light. Super smooth looking. Appears they had played this on an emulator that's Xenia emulator, And so that, of course, comes through in a higher resolution, all these. And now, here's where things get kind of interesting. They do say that this is not related to that 4chan leak, which had a password on it. That, I guess, can't be cracked. It's a pretty serious password, so that's just not going to happen there. Now, aside from some of the different things about the rights holders, why it was canceled and all that, like I said, there's people who are kind of conflicting messages on that one. I'm more interested on, will I be able to play this game eventually? I'm curious if that will happen. And according to them, they say in their FAQ section here in their description, is this releasing soon or someday? And they say, release is not on me. I cannot publish this. I've been told it'll be released in 2021. So either get that emulator ready, or even what I think would be really cool is to play this on an actual 360. So a modified 360, I guess, and we can load it up and try it out how it was meant to be played. That would be so awesome. I hope this happens, and who knows? I mean, I guess this is just the campaign. I don't know if there was ever thought of doing an online multiplayer for it, but like, if we had Goldeneye online, wow, that would be one of the coolest releases of the year. And, you know, I do hope that there is still a future for this game someday. Like, that would be amazing if Microsoft, Nintendo, they came together with the rights holders for 007. They were just like, oh yeah, we're on board, it's fine. Because, I mean, IO managed to get it done, so this would be good too. If Microsoft and Nintendo came together and they were like, okay, Microsoft can release it on their Xbox platform and Nintendo can take it and put it on the Nintendo 64 Classic that we heard so many rumors about a while ago and get that done, that'd be awesome. We'd have like the best of both worlds there. We'd get a new N64 with it on there, and we get the updated version for the Xbox Series X now with online play. So a lot of things that would have to get done and a lot of wishful thinking, but here it is, and maybe later on this year we'll be able to try it out. Next up, let's talk about one of the weirdest cover arts I have ever seen. It's one of those cover arts where you kind of look at it once, then you kind of look right back at it, a little double take there, because it's an Xbox game with a PlayStation logo on it. Yeah, check this out here. This appears to have been leaked out on Instagram ahead of its official reveal, which I guess is going to take place on Hot Ones later on today. So we'll see if all of this comes true here with this cover art, but it was getting passed around. Some people were kind of giving the nod towards it, like, yeah, that's going to happen. And we've already heard that it's going to go to other platforms, which we assume includes the Switch, although there's been no mention of it, but there has been mention in retail listings even for the Xbox version of MLB The Show 21, and yeah, there is an Xbox box art right there with the PlayStation Studios logo. What a weird time to be alive, because for the longest time, Sony was very serious about not doing this. And I mean, the hand was forced because MLB obviously wanted to have this game on other platforms. Why wouldn't they? They want to make a bunch of money. And I assume we're going to get a Switch cover art with a PlayStation Studios logo on it too. And that's going to be weird. That's going to be really strange. I mean, this is already weird, but like a Switch, I'm going to buy it. Like I have to get the Switch version with the PlayStation logo. I think I have to get this Xbox version too. Not even digital, just like actually like physical, just in case this falls apart someday. I can say that I have the Xbox box art with a PlayStation logo on it. Super weird. I mean, MLB The Show, it's a fun enough baseball game, but this is just a strange year, obviously. It's something we'll get used to if this is just ongoing, as we assume it will be. But yeah, look out for that cover art reveal, I guess, on Hot Ones at some time today, and we'll see the big blown up high resolution version of it. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Biomutant once again, because we had talked about how it's coming out in May, so a couple of months from now, we'll be able to check this one out. And it's looked pretty cool when they've shown it to us, the big action, open world style RPG game, and the characters are interesting. You get to create your own little character there and run around and I guess gain abilities and fight all kind of enemies and everything there. But it had been kind of delayed and then it disappeared for a while, then it popped back up. But now we have at least an explanation as to why it went away for a while. Now, a lot of it seemed to focus around bug fixes. As they continue to expand the game itself, they run into more and more bugs. There's more QA testing, and they were like, well, we're not going to cyberpunk this thing. We'll hold it off for a bit. And because there were like 20 people working on this project, it just took longer because they have to try to find the bugs. And then when they do, they still have to fix them. However, that was not the only thing they were doing while they were waiting to get this game out. it looks like they decided to go back and also add quite a bit more when it comes to dialogue. This coming from IGN, where they say quality assurance isn't the only thing that's been happening at Experiment 101 over the last year, though. Biomutant has well mutated in that period too. If you look at the script, by the end of 2019, I think it was about 80 to 85,000 words, pretty much a novel. But in the final game, it's closer to 250,000 words. That was a big thing to wrap that script. They're going to say, as a result of the expanded script, players can expect a reactive karma system called Aura, which will change NPC dialogue based on your light or dark allegiance. There's also a better tutorial system, which more effectively communicates Biomutant's overflowing toy box of ideas. On top of the additional script forming the basis of these features, the game will be available in 13 different languages, 10 of which are fully voiced, and so localization is required on all those added words. It's safe to say it's been a busy year for Experiment 101. First of all, that's great. They have all those language options, ton of voice work done there, but to see them even expanding from that into like this system where you're like either good or bad and there's a lot of dialogue options, it'll be interesting to see how the dialogue really changes based on what you're doing, if there are legit consequences either way, or if it's like it just shoots off to one dialogue tree and then you're right back to where you were anyway. But either way, it seems like they got pretty ambitious with it and they had the time to be ambitious. So good to see that they didn't at least rush this one out. And I gotta say, the more I'm reading and seeing and hearing about Biomutant, I'm getting a bit more excited for it, so it should be a lot of fun in May to check this one out. And before we take a look at the comment of the day, let's take a look at the poll that I posted up on Friday. Remember, later on after Newswave is posted each day, I will have a poll up for people to vote on based on one of the topics in that Newswave. And we can see this one here. I said, will Sony announce a different PS5 game release like Ratchet & Clank for March, with Returnal being delayed to April? And a lot of people say no. I mean, yeah, it's 34% yes and 66% no, that Returnal on April 30th will indeed be the next Sony game. And that feels like a while from when the system came out for Sony to take that long to get another, I guess, bigger first-party game out. But they will have Destruction All-Stars, I guess, tomorrow. And who knows, maybe they'll have something else lined up from a third party to bring in. But like, it's taken Sony a little while to get this year going here, or this generation, I guess. But I mean, they're still selling systems. There's a shortage. That's been brought up to me as well, that look, why would they create this software if people can't get the PS5? Well, they're the ones who said it was the biggest PlayStation launch ever. You figure they'd want to follow that up with software of some kind. But if people are, I mean, if it's really waiting till basically the beginning of May, that is actually longer than I thought it would be for Sony to get things started here. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Tayo saying, put gaming system in car. When I was a kid, we literally brought a small TV, hooked up a GameCube, and played 3-player Smash Bros. Melee with my brothers in the back of the car for long trips. So if we would go on like a super long road trip, there was one like family friend who had one of those big vans. I mean, this is like back in the 90s, you know, one of the vans that has like the ladder on the back, and like you look in, it has like a big bed in the back, and they had like a TV. If you had a car with a TV back then in the 90s, you were like one of the cool kids, right? Because you could hook up a VCR and watch different shows or movies while you're on this long 10-hour road trip. Or yes, you could hook up a game system. I hope you don't hit a bump and mess up the Super Nintendo or Nintendo or N64 or something. But now we're seeing just Tesla cars have game systems basically built in, and they can, I guess, drive your own. Maybe that's the future. Maybe in the future we can get a lot of our gaming in during our commute, because the car is just so advanced it can drive us around, and we can just get a controller, sync it up to the car, and like play through different games on it. What a time that would be. Ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. Enjoyed this video, guys? Hit that like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Was the GameWare website leak, apparently, for Breath of the Wild 2 in Q2. Don't know if I believe that one. If it was the full title that they leaked out for Breath of the Wild 2 based on the history, that could be a different conversation. But let me know what you think Breath of the Wild 2 will come out. Also, what about that Goldeneye remaster video that was put online? What do you think about that one? And should Microsoft and Nintendo come back to the table and get this game released? Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.